Okay, good afternoon. During the declared emergency, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and in-person attendance limitations. This will be a virtual public hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants registered in advance will be connecting by either by their computer, a phone or tablet app, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry, and when your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the committee members will be participating by video. Panel members participating today are Don Taylor, Laura Alderson, Neil Palmer, and Stan Kumarek. And I am Michael Clark, and I'm the panel chair. All registered participants will be participating by audio only. We ask that you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with Sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act, 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that apply to the property, permissions to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consents to sever properties to create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wishes to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on a particular application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and email address, because Committee of Adjustment and the TLAB, in the event of an appeal, will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee rendered here today, decisions may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, TLAB, or in some limited circumstances to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. The hearing procedure is as follows. We'll call each item in the order listed in the agenda. And in making your submissions where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with a presentation if desired. Where the committee does not require a presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to address the committee. The committee may ask questions and or take the matter into the committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant or agent, is given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment when you're reaching the 5-minute mark. When addressing the committee, please start off by stating your name and address clearly for the record, and please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent proceeds first and makes a presentation to the committee of their application. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if being substantially revised to ensure that the revised application is both accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application have been informed of the revisions. Then individuals either in support or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker at the end of their submissions. And when all speakers are finished, the applicant or agent is given an opportunity to rebut only those issues and answer those questions that have been raised by the speakers, but not to introduce new information at that time. That will then mark the end of the discussion. Oh, when all speakers are finished, yes, the applicant agent has an opportunity, I said that, to rebut only those issues have been raised. And when all that ends the discussion, the application is then taken into committee for a decision. Does any of the staff or panel members have any declarations of interest on the matters before us on this afternoon's agenda? Okay, none to declare. Okay, and I don't believe there are any deferral requests, so we can, I guess, move on then and call item number 22, A, B, and C, 15 Roseneath Avenue. It's an application for consent to sever the property into two substandard lots, and on each lot so divided, to construct thereon a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. We have presentation materials. We have community planning is recommending refusal of the application. believing they would create two undersized lots of 7.62 frontage is not in keeping with the configuration of and size of existing lots. We have memo from Economic Construction Services. We have an opposition petition, as well as a unsigned and unsigned letter with no address or name, unless we now have that. Otherwise, it's to be disregarded. And in the additional materials, we have Urban Forestry requesting a denial of the application. We do have Urban Forestry's, their denial, item number 5. And there are 9 variants on each of the 2 minor variance applications for the 2 new proposed detached dwellings to be built. The speaker for this application is Ida Evangelista, and as well the neighbor from 16 Rothmead, Francis Willett. So, good afternoon, Mrs. Evangelista.
And good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I have notified staff that I will have to ask for a deferral for this application, as it has just come to our attention this week that there is a discrepancy with the elevation, and which has affected the height of the dwellings. And also, not to mention that forestry have written a report of refusal because they went ahead and, unbeknownst to the owners, planted a tree. That said, we now have to move the driveways. And, you know, in light of the fact that the tree was just recently planted, zoning has just come back to us with a discrepancy. I can't, you know, I'm erring on the side of caution. I think it's best that we do defer this application, as that has now affected the variances on your notice.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Evangelista on that? And we have to hear from the neighbor, I guess, who's here, I guess, to speak to the merits, just to advise them of the deferral. Okay, so let's hear from Francis Willett, the neighbor at 16 Rosemead. We have that Francis on the line. Francois Willett.
Yes, sorry, that's okay.
Okay.
Same, all the same.
Welcome,
Hi,
sir.
good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
So I assume you're here to
Yep.
speak on the merits of the application. However, the applicant or the agent, as you've just heard, has advised that this application is going to have to be deferred. You will be re-notified. We don't need to know what your concerns are now, but you will be re-notified, and this matter will come back at another date.
Okay, works for me.
Okay, in the meantime, perhaps...
Sorry, yeah, I have some comments that can apply either like being deferred or not. So, but should we just wait for the next hearing then?
Yes, we're not going to hear anything on the merits either for or against at this point. But in the meantime, perhaps the intervening period of time, perhaps if your neighbor has not consulted with you or you haven't spoken to your neighbor, perhaps while the matter is before it's brought back on, perhaps Mrs. Evangelista or her client can have a discussion with you and find out what your concerns are. I don't think you've written in any letter, so perhaps you can use that time to some benefit. Okay, committee members.
So what kind of time are we, sorry, what sort of time are we talking, like weeks, months?
That's up to when the applicant or the agent gets the application perfected and ready to be brought back on, but you will be re-notified. I'm not sure how long it's going to take. Okay, so committee members, motion to defer. Mr. Taylor?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move deferral sine die to enable the variances to be corrected.
Okay, thank you. Seconder for that? Mr. Komorik, thank you. All in favor? Okay, Mrs. Evangelista, the application is being deferred at your request.
Thank you.
We'll see you here again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Okay, the next application is item number 235365 Dundas Street West. And this is an application to facilitate development of Phase 3 with 2 proposed new residential apartment buildings. Building A will consist of a 37-story tower with 418 residential units, and Building B will consist of a 36-story tower with 378 residential units for a total of 796 residential units for both buildings. There are 7 variances, I guess, as compared to the bylaw in effect. We have 2 covering letters, a shadow study, transportation study, 2 of them. We have an applicant's presentation, a copy of the bylaw, 2 bylaws, as well as communication from planning. There's comments from TTC and then the additional materials, Overland LLP. The agent has responded to that. There's a planning condition, 3 transportation conditions, the TTC communication, 10, we have a support and an opposition. And I guess the speaker on this is Chris Tanzola of Overland LLP. Good afternoon, Mr. Tanzola.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much to the members of the committee for hearing this application. I was going to ask to have the presentation materials brought up. I see that they have been, and I'm going to start my presentation now. Thank you very much. If I could ask for the second page of the presentation materials. The site in question at 5365 Dundas, on the south side of Dundas, west of Kipling Avenue, east of the 427. It's known as the Canadian Tire site. It used to be a Canadian Tire location. Canadian Tire developed the site in 2005, or had approvals granted in 2005 for a multi-story, multi-phase development, multi-tower development. My client, Concert Properties, acquired the site in 2013 and has moved ahead to build it out in phases, but not very dissimilar from the original concept for the development. If I could ask for page 5 of the presentation materials. It's that one right there. So this shows phases 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is completed and has been condominiumized. Phase 2 and 3 are under construction and nearing completion. In phase 2, we have both a rental apartment building as well as a condominium apartment building. And those have all been approved through approvals granted by the Committee of Adjustment and by the City of Toronto as we've moved through the phases. If I could ask for the next visual, please. Here we see phase 3 of the development. It's the remaining 2 towers. We have a condominium building on the left at 37 stories and a rental apartment building on the right at 36 stories. That's what we're seeking approval for today. 2 towers have been approved in generally those locations already, just at slightly different heights and with a different number of units and a different amount of gross floor area. If I could go back to the master plan drawing, that was the first one we had up on the screen. One more, there we the next one forward, please. One more, please. Oh, that's not it. One down. There we are. Thank you very much. So the first phases have, as I said, they've progressed. There is a rental apartment building in phase 2. It's identified as building E on that drawing there. That was it contains affordable rental units through agreements with the City of Toronto. In phase 3, building B will also be a rental building, and you'll see that one of the conditions requested by planning is to secure the rental tenure for a period of 20 years, and my client is satisfied with that condition. The variances that are involved here, there are 7 of them. A height variance is required for the rental apartment building to add 4 stories, but only 2 meters in height. And in respect of the condominium building, building A, it's just the number of stories that needs to be varied, not the heights that were approved in the 2018 rezoning of the site. So it's going from a 36-story permission and a 4-story podium to a 37-story permission and a 5-story podium. There are a number of variances that deal with the building envelopes. I wonder if you could go to the next drawing down, please. And one more, thank you. You'll see here there's a comparison on the top of a 2018 site-specific bylaw for the site, and on the bottom is the amended building envelopes that we're seeking to have approved through this application. In 2018, the plans for phase 3 had not progressed to the site plan approval stage. We have now started our site plan application with the City of Toronto. It's been in since 2020. We're working through it. It's led to a much better defined building, much better sense of the building placement and separation distances. And you'll see from the building envelope drawing on the bottom, that's how we've got to a level of specificity with respect to the building envelopes. We've filed a shadow study demonstrating that there are no offsite impacts from the slight increase in height of the condominium building, and there's actually a decrease in shadow with respect to the rental building. There is a variance that's required for gross floor area. This is the first time that Concert has sought to increase the gross floor area that was originally approved in 2005. It's a small increase over the overall on the site. Over 100,000 square meters or 1 million square feet of density was approved in 2005. This application seeks to add an additional about 7,000 square meters of density for the extra floors that are being added to the rental building and the condominium building. It's about a 7% increase in the overall gross floor area. I want to talk quickly about there's a small parking variance to reduce the parking standards slightly for smaller units, and that's supported by a transportation report that was submitted, and those variances are supported by the transportation services comments. I did want to spend some time on the condition requested by planning because it is an important one. Planning requested one or the other condition. They provided alternatives. You'll see in our correspondence, we are seeking to have condition number 2 of the planning memo applied to this application and not condition number 1. And I hope that was clear in our correspondence. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those questions. But condition number 2 of the planning memo required the tenure of the building, the rental building, to be rental for 20 years through an agreement with the City of Toronto, and also tied the unit sizes and mix to the current site plan application to ensure some adequately sized family units. And it's condition number 2 that reflects the site plan application that Concert has been working on with the City of Toronto. So for us, it's very important that if you're inclined to approve this, that it be condition number 2 from the planning memo that's attached and not condition number 1. The other conditions from the TTC, we are happy to accept. Concert through the site plan application has been working through the TTC's issues. If we went back to the building envelope, you can see that there is quite a large set aside for the TTC easement to run through the southern part of this property. And finally, again, if the committee is inclined to approve this, because a number of the variances refer specifically to that revised building envelope schedule that I took you to, it would be very helpful if, when the decision came out, that schedule was also attached to the decision so that there wouldn't be any confusion about which schedule is referred to. I've gone a little bit over my 5 minutes.
Yep.
Again, I'm happy to answer any questions, in particular with respect to the conditions, because I know I tried to get through that pretty quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Tenzel. Yes, you went over a little over 6 minutes, but it's a big application. It's important. There's a lot of units here, and it was important that you went through everything. So you do wish of the 2 alternative conditions from planning, you want condition 2, not condition 1, and you're okay with the 3 transportation conditions as well as you're going to comply with that. So committee members, any questions for Mr. Tanzola, or is someone ready to attempt a motion?
No, I have a question, if you don't mind. Between number 1 and number 2, those 2 conditions, what is the essential difference? Without going into a lengthy discussion about it.
The essential difference is that the size of the 2 and 3 bedroom units that's required by condition number 1 is the number that's found in the City of Toronto's new growing up guidelines. It's a slightly larger unit size than what my client is proposing, than what my client thinks is marketable at an appropriate price point for this location. And so through discussions with planning staff and through the submission of the site plan application, we're asking for a slight reduction in the size of the 2 bedroom units, and a slight reduction in the number of the large 3 bedroom units that would be required. So in items 2 to 5 that you see on your screen before you, you see a certain percentage and a certain size of units. If you go to condition number 2 on the next page, those numbers reflect our current application, and they do provide for some slightly smaller units than what the guidelines would require, understanding that those are guidelines and they're not zoning bylaw requirements.
So it's basically about size matters, rather than inclusionary zoning or affordable housing units. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is not engaging that discussion about inclusionary zoning or affordable housing.
So knowing that the city is about to bring in, they're about to bring in an inclusionary zoning policy. If we approve this today, and rather than defer it, are you avoiding that particular policy, the implications of that policy?
I would say that's a bit of a complicated answer. This site wouldn't be subject to inclusionary zoning at the current moment. In order to be subject to inclusionary zoning, there has to be a major transit station area, a protected major transit station area defined around the station. That hasn't been done yet. The city doesn't actually have its policies adopted yet. There are grandfathering provisions that are provided both by the province and that will likely be provided with the City of Toronto. So this site, I'm not saying that we're trying to get this approved today in order to avoid those inclusionary zoning. This site currently isn't on the path to inclusionary zoning in any event.
So it wouldn't be applicable to
Yeah.
this particular site.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah,
much. for that.
in any event, that's all very interesting, but am I correct, Mr. Tenzoli, in interpreting this memo that it's up to you, the applicant, to choose whether you want one or two? So you're choosing two. Isn't that the simple answer here?
I won't put what was in staff's head when coming forward with the recommendations, but definitely there's an or clause in there, and definitely number 2 is the one that works
Right.
that works with the building that we're advancing with city staff.
Right. I don't imagine that city staff envision the committee members choosing between units choices 1 or 2, but actually the applicant or the itself. So, and anyway, thank you for that explanation. It's helpful. Are there any other questions?
Palmer.
Yep.
For the applicant, the condition requested by CP, your additional letter that came in, you said you're opposed to that condition just because you believe your client is generally meeting the guidelines that they've asked for. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, and thank you for noticing that in our letter. The way that CP put their comments forward, we are addressing all of CP's issues through our site plan application. The way they put the comment forward was, I read more as less of a request for a condition than more of a direction to make sure we're dealing with this. In particular, it'd be difficult for my client to satisfy that condition since it's very generally worded and there's no approval authority. The CP is not an approval authority, so it's not like we could say, you know, hey CP, are you satisfied? Now can we pull our building permit? The chief building official has no business going to get that instruction from CP. So we are respecting what they require, which is the setback from the rail line, and we're observing that through our site plan application.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask, related to the TTC, can their recommended conditions be achieved through site plan? Because normally the committee doesn't include outside agency conditions because it can be sometimes difficult to obtain clearances.
Barb, your
since there's
voice is
nothing
trailing
coming in.
off. Your voice is trailing off, Barb, I didn't hear what you said at the very end.
Normally, committee doesn't impose conditions from outside agencies due
Correct.
to the difficulty in getting sign-offs. So can those conditions be achieved through the site plan process?
Is that a question directed towards me or to the chair? I wasn't sure.
To the agent, yeah.
Yes, certainly they can be. We are addressing all of these items with the TTC right now through our site plan application. There is a real estate discussion going on to make sure that the TTC has the right ownership and easement interests to protect for any future expansion of the subway. These same conditions are coming up in the site plan application. And so we would be quite happy not to have them also attached to this decision, but we are going to satisfy these conditions one way or another.
Okay, are there any other questions or is someone ready for a motion?
I have a question or a quandary, and it really relates to staff, I guess. To me, this application isn't minor. And although I don't disagree with what's being presented here, I question whether the committee is the appropriate venue for vetting this. Is there no other way to, like, is there no other rezoning or site plan process that really the scope of such decisions should be brought to, given that the committee doesn't have the knowledge of all of the other developments that are going on here? And this is really tied to specific, site-specific zoning. It's really not a minor variance.
Mr. Komarick, I guess it's up to the committee to decide what is variance, but it's, when was this, Mr. Tenzel, when was this first approval put together? You said 2003?
The original set of approvals for the Canadian Tire site is 2005.
Okay.
Concert has been developing the site since 2013. It received a minor variance for the first building to increase the height of the first building in 2014. In 2018, the rest of the site was rezoned. So the two towers that we're talking about here, two towers are approved in this location. It's just we're seeking to increase the
No, I
height
know
of
that,
those
but what was the
towers.
date of that
And-
approval? You're
and
saying 2003? I think
that
I
was-
just want to make a point for Mr. Kamarick. I was sitting down at downtown and even at this committee, that when a approval is 5, 6 years old, never mind 16 years old, it is common for them to come back for additional density in light of what has happened in the interim, in the 16-year interim. So we haven't heard any. Planning staff is imposing a lot of conditions. They're not seeking to have this refused. So I think we can use that as our comfort of trying to characterize this as minor, because it's a very common situation for building sizes to be increased when the approval is more than a few years old, never mind 16. That's just my comment.
I have an additional question too as well. Are Section 37 monies at all incorporated into this proposal for the community?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. The original set of approvals did include an extensive set of Section 37 requirements, publicly accessible open spaces, the need for a private road and easements through the site. There was some streetscape improvements, if I recall. There was quite a package of Section 37 benefits. For this application, rather than a Section 37 benefit, there are Section 45 agreements that are permitted. And what we've agreed to secure through Section 45, which wouldn't otherwise be secured, is the rental tenure of that rental building for a period of at least 20 years. And so that's the community benefit, so to speak, of the application.
So that's the trade-off. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Someone ready for a motion? Mr. Taylor.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm satisfied that the variances requested meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move approval subject to Transportation Department conditions and Community Planning condition number 2.
Thank you. I don't think there's any. Is there urban? No, there's no urban forestry. Okay, seconded for that motion. Mr. Palmer, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Tenzola.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Great. Okay, our next application is item number 24, 21 Charleston Road. We have a revised notice sheet highlighted. There were 5 variances. There are still 5 variances. The only change was a slight reduction in the flat roof height from 7.55 to 7.5. We have the revised zoning review and revised plans, an arborist report, transportation, and there's no objection. There are 4 letters of opposition, concern about variances, and also construction issues. Excavation, that's not before us. And in the additional materials, we have an email from someone on Martin Grove who wants to participate in the hearing. And that's all we have. There are 5 variances, and there still are. Okay. The speaker for this application is Orest Stoyanovsky, as well as we have the neighbors from 23, 27 Charleston, and 20 Martin Grove, the gentleman I just mentioned, and Anne-Marie Davino from 27. So we have 3 speakers registered to speak in addition to the applicant. So let's hear from Mr. Stoyanovsky.
Good afternoon, Chairman Committee. It's pretty straightforward application. If we could pull a site plan drawing on a screen, that would be easier to show. Also, if there would be any chance to zoom in into the drawing itself. So here we could see it's a very simple new building, which is for the most part an existing foundation. In front of the building, we could see we are matching the existing condition. There is an existing front porch, and it lines up with 2 neighbors on each side, as well as at the back, we are matching the existing wall where the existing building is, and as well the new proposal is in line with 2 existing dwellings on each side. We are respecting side yard setbacks. So in terms of building footprint, we could see we are matching pretty much the same as any other building on the street. in front and at the back. Also, in terms of lot coverage, the building itself actually 32 foot wide by 50 and 9 inches results in roughly 1,600 square feet of footprint, which is about 29-30% of the lot coverage. And the lot coverage figure is bigger just because we have this patio at the back. We could see walkout basement and the patio on the side, which is at grade level. So that contributes to the lot coverage figure. But on the other hand, we are demolishing the existing garage, roughly same size as a patio. So in terms of building, it's within the lot coverage as well as within the side yard setbacks, matching the existing dwelling at the back and the existing in the front. Very small proposal. The existing driveway to remain as well, as noted by transportation in their comments, no change there. So they have no objections, as well as planning. They only had one suggestion in terms of height of the building, to make it 7.5 sharp. So we did that, and we think it's really minor in nature, and would like to ask for your approval.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Stoyanovsky at this point, or we'll hear from the neighbors as to what their concerns are? Okay, the first neighbor scheduled to speak at number 23, right next door, is Dr. Margaret Verneveld.
Hi there.
Hello.
Okay, I haven't done this kind of a meeting, so I hope I do this correctly. I've been at this home, and this home was because this neighborhood is a very pretty neighborhood. We had when we look at the configuration and pattern of all these bungalows when I moved in, with the exception of some 2-story homes that actually maintained their laneway, what we had was a pattern here. We had in each house, on my side to 21, and on the other side to 25, and again on the other side to 27, we had laneways. The house across the street from me that has a 2-story also has a laneway, which gives us all approximately 15 feet apart from each other, which is really a good deal of privacy, especially when we have only 40-foot lots. So my first concern is with respect to how close they will be building this to my property. We already have 16 feet or 15 feet approximately. I'm not an architect or someone that, but when I look at the measurements, what they're proposing is to come into 4 feet to the property line. And this is going to make the home even closer to mine. I'm on the south side, all my sunshine in the pictures that I have submitted. I have my open concept living room, dining room, all that sun comes through there, the bedroom, even in the basement, and then I got that. So I recognize now that I'm actually going to lose all that, no matter what. But the closest they build to my home, the more sun I will lose. So the first issue then for me too is the closer they are is issues with water and water runoff. Right now we have lots where we have space in between the houses on both sides of me, which, as I said, approximately 15 feet away from each home. With that kind of having that kind of space for water runoff, I have never had, and I can swear to that, I have never had water damage in my basement. I've done all the necessary recommendations by the city to have a backflow put in. I've done whatever in some pumps, and I've always been very careful with snow removal. I've done everything by the book. And so now this laneway that's now there that I've always had is going to be, they're going to be 4 feet away from the property line. So that will completely block all my windows for any sun. That's the first thing. And then the second concern is the water, the way they're proposing the swale, or swale, or however you call that. I have other neighbors in other homes that have had concerns and problems with that because of the water runoff. When we're taking away all of our green space, all of the areas that water can flow, and we're having this large home just cover all this. This is kind of, I know the kind of seems to be the prevailing pattern now, is to build bigger homes. and then remove more and more green space, places for water to go. And I have a beautiful garden at the back. I made that garden at the front that you can see. I like greenery and I like trees, and this is all going to go, and I will not have my son. The major concern I have obviously is the height. That the height of it, even if I have to accept that my south exposure is gone, as they have the right to build this house, obviously, the height to do a variance of higher than what the bylaw says, I did look and I did a SunCalc study on that. And basically, and I submitted my calculations and looking at, I don't know, I'm not aware if they've done a shadow study at all onto my home. But by then, if they were to stay by the bylaw of 6.5 meters, and they kept it at least a distance of 5 feet from my property line, then I would at least get some sun in the worst time of the
Can
year.
you, Sherry, please
solstice, which
wrap
is
up,
in
ma'am? You're
December.
at your 5-minute mark. Thank you. Please try to
And
wrap.
if
Just
they do
summarize.
the variance, well, it's very important to me in that a developer had the extra time.
Excuse me?
I'm trying to explain.
Okay,
and
please try to wrap up.
okay.
We have your letter. We have your letter with pictures. It's the first letter in our package.
So the next, okay, and the
I'm gonna-
final thing, okay.
Please wrap
so
up. You're at,
This architect is telling us he's revising it to 7.5. How is that any different than 7.55? What he's doing by getting this variance approved is basically he's taken away all of my sunlight from my skylights throughout the winter months. That would be between mid-October until March. That's reduced my property value, my enjoyment of my home because of the variance being approved.
Thank you, ma'am. Can you, thank you.
Okay, sorry, thank you, okay.
I just want to point out, the committee, as many of the members mentioned, Mr. Taylor, when he makes a motion, we only look at the increase. He's entitled to build as a right. He is going a meter higher. He's building an additional 36 square meters. Otherwise, he would be on side for his floor space index. So we have to show the committee how that extra 36 square meters, not how the whole development. I also don't see a side yard setback. You mentioned he's coming closer to your house, but he is not offending any of the, he has a front yard setback variance, but he doesn't have a front yard. So just, you should understand that the committee doesn't look at the application. They only look at the variances and not what he's entitled to build as of right. So the question is, would you also be affected by what he could build as of right? So thank you for your, you had almost 6 minutes, and we'll see if the committee members have any questions for you. And like I said, Mr. Stoyanovsky will respond to your concerns in his rebuttal. Any questions for Dr. Vornevald? Anyone? No? Okay, so let's then hear from the next neighbor, Mr. Terry at 20 Martin Grove Road.
Right, thanks very much. So I see that my letter really is about the increase from 33% to 35%. And if we look at the 33%, even at 33%, this is taking away space from the neighbors, taking away sunlight, increasing water runoff, and those types of things that we've always just heard about. And what's wrong with 33%? Why do we keep pushing it? Even at 33%, we're increasing it. So I'd just like to understand why we keep going more and more. If somebody wants a bigger house, buy a bigger lot. Why do the neighbors have to keep putting up with it? And then point number 4 is about the flat roof height. This is a major concern, of course, because of water runoff. As you know, we have had many floods in the neighborhood. And if studies aren't done before these people build, they build the house, the water runoff is increased, and the next thing you know, they've sold the house and moved on, leaving the neighbors to deal with the flooding. So those are my 2 basic things. As we live in the backyard, right now the land slopes towards our backyard. So really, those are the 2 issues that I have. And I think that completes my message.
Yeah, do we have a letter from you, Mr. Cherry, in the additional materials?
Yeah.
Okay, because I saw you had sent in something saying you wanted to speak, right? That you would.
Yeah, no, I wanted to speak at the hearing to just put my voice out there.
Yep, for sure, for sure. Okay, that's all you want to say? You still have time left.
No,
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, anyone have any questions for Mr. Terry, or we'll go to the next speaker? Anne Marie Davino from 27 Charleston Road.
Oh, hi, good afternoon. I don't really have anything formally prepared, and I do apologize. I think I registered because I thought I was registering for the meeting. But in listening to this, I have to say I don't have anything new to add, but I think that there's a lot of valid points, and my concern comes to what's going to happen in the future, because I do know I have a couple neighbors on either side of me who are probably going to be getting ready to list their house, more than likely in our neighborhood, will sell to a builder. And if we keep allowing these variances, and they seem to be keep getting bigger, if you look at number 18 Charleston across the street and how tall that house is, then where does it stop? And the flooding was very important. We had to help all our neighbors, take care of that. But even more than that, there's an economic effect as well, because everyone's insurance went up because we had all these claims and everything else. The privacy issue is also a concern. I have children in the house. We're in these nice bungalows. We pay the money to be on these nice lots, so that we have a bit of space, so that we have that. These are all really important concerns that I think the neighborhood shares. They didn't all sign up to go on here, but if you talk to any of the neighbors, they all share those concerns. So mine is brief, but that's just my 2 cents worth.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any questions for any of the speakers? And if not, we'll go back to the agent for his rebuttal.
Sure. If we could please put the site plan on the screen, I think that would be helpful again. Hello? Yep. Oh, thank you. So in terms of setbacks and lot coverage, I think the site plan truly speaks for itself. It's really evident that we are matching the front and the back as neighbors on each side, and it's really as respectful as you could possibly get on a lot. So increase in terms of lot coverage is really minimal, as well as GFA too. And it's within keeping what's happening on the street and the neighbors as well. And the site plan really shows it and explains the proposal, as well as height of the building. The ground floor is 2'6" from the grade if we would look at the elevations. And then for the ground floor height, we have 10 foot and 9 foot for the second floor. And that's it. There is about 2 feet for floor space itself, for floor framing. And there is nothing excessive. There is no roofs, no projecting chimneys, no parapets, more than 1 foot, nothing really that contributes to excessive height. It's really minimal in terms of from the grade to the ground floor. And in terms of floor heights, there is no double height spaces, nothing like that. It's only 10 foot for the ground floor, 9 for the second, as minimum as you could possibly have. So in terms of height, there is nothing really excessive, and we think it's really minor as well. Planning has no objections to it, and they suggested to reduce it by 0.5. We complied with that, asking for your approval.
Okay, thank you, sir. The neighbor next door, Mrs. Dr. Vernevald, kept mentioning about how you're coming closer to her and you're using up her I don't see a side yard setback, so
No.
there is no side yard setback, correct?
Exactly. And if anything, we are only improving that situation, because currently there is an asphalt driveway and we are proposing sod between the property line and the building, and we are within the zoning bylaw. We are complying on that side completely, the zoning bylaw.
Okay, so there's no variance, but are you getting closer to where it was previously, where the bungalow was? Or it's the same spot?
We are getting closer, but there is no variance.
Correct.
No variance proposed.
No, but I'm trying to wonder why she's concerned if there's no variance, if perhaps there was, even though there's no variance, that it was further away. I realize this is going to be a much bigger, taller wall. Now it's going to be a 2-story with a height variance of a meter, but there is no side yard setback on either side. Correct?
No variance for the side yard setback on either side.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Sanofsky, committee members, or or even for the neighbors for that matter, if you wish, or is someone ready for a motion? Mr. Taylor?
Yes, Mr. Chair. My thinking on this one is similar to one that we dealt with this morning. And Mr. Chair, as you alluded, sort of, I guess my rationale for that one would be the same here. It's considering the impact vis-a-vis what is permitted as of right. And when I look at these 5 variances, I don't see anything that is egregious or grossly out of scale with what's permitted as of right. So I'm satisfied all the variances meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I move approval without conditions.
Thank you, sir. Seconder for that motion? Ms. Alderson, thank you.
Seconder, but just with a question, is there not a city tree on the front of that house? Yeah, I'm looking at the wrong.
If there is, urban forestry didn't attach a condition to it.
Okay, I see the tree, but I don't see the condition, so I'm just raising that.
Okay, so Ms. Alderson had her hand up to second, so I'll take her as the seconder. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Sanofsky, and thank you to the neighbors.
Thank you.
Okay, our next application is item number 25, 25 Grovedale Avenue. It's for a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. There are 7 variances. Planning is recommending refusal of variances 2 and 3, the length and the depth. Transportation has no objection. Urban Forestry is looking for a denial of variance 7 for the driveway width. That was in the additional materials, and that's all we have. The speaker for this application is Mehdi Husseini, and there's no other speakers registered. Mr. Husseini.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Not very well, sir. Try again.
Can you hear me now better?
A little better. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I think we should get a short presentation, even though there's no one here. If you need to respond to community planning recommendation that the depth and the length be refused.
Right. I'm just going to mention that we're asking the point that they have for the length and the depth, we understand it. For the depth, the issue here is that my client, they have their 2 kids, they're living with them, and they always have their families visiting them. So they need more space for their car to park in front of the driveway for 4 cars. So that's why they pushed their house a bit back in order to get enough space for their cars. And also, if you're looking at the drawings, their square footage is so much less than what they're allowed to build. The only thing is they wanted to have a bigger first floor area, so they don't want to use the second floor that much. So that's why their first floor area is a bit bigger. And the length and the depth problem that we have is mostly for one portion of the house on the main floor, which we have the dining area in front of the kitchen. If you go to the first floor, while you're showing the drawings, yeah, on the first floor, just the portion that we have on the right side, as you see, is the dining area that's projecting out. That's creating this issue with the length and the depth. And regarding the eavesdrops, the same thing. So our actual eavesdrop is 0.5 meters, which is the standard type. The only reason that it's this minor variance been triggered because of the side yard setbacks. And the other one was the air conditioning. And also, oh, by the way, we're removing number 4, the condition, the minor variance number 4, which is the first floor height. So we don't need that one.
So you're eliminating variance number 4?
Number 4, yes.
Okay.
So we don't need that.
And you're only over by 0.03 of a meter, so in any
yes,
event.
so
Okay.
we can comply with
But
that.
in terms of the length and depth that you're telling us, the community planning is 19, where you're 21. Did you explain to them that it's only for certain projections? Because sometimes when they agree to that,
Yes.
they'll give it to you and say, okay,
Yes.
but we want it tied to the plan for the length and the depth, so you don't do it across the whole lot. I'm just surprised
I
that they're not
understand that they-
recommending that here. Why didn't they recommend
Yeah,
that?
we had a discussion with the planner at the city, and
Yes.
they said no, because the length is too much to their view. But I explained it here, this is just a portion of the dining room area. It's not the whole house project in back. And so basically, we're just asking for 1.5 meter, which is that portion of the house. And also the depth, I explained it was the issue with the depth. The actual size of the house is 17 meter on the other side. It's just the dining room that's projecting outside, it's creating this. And also regarding the width of the driveway, I know that the forestry asked for this, and the condition is going to be on the approval from the committee of adjustment. And we are willing to, we started the process with the forestry department already, and we are willing to go through that. And if they're not approving it at the, you know, at the worst case scenario, we're going to flip the house. I already talked to the client, and we understand that the condition of approval going to be the condition. It's going to be to the approval of the forestry as well. So if there is any question, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, well, my question is what I just said to you. When it says here in the planning memo that they communicated their concerns to you, and you told them you weren't making any changes. But did you not tell them that, oh, it's just for a few projections, can't you just tie it to the plans? That's what they typically do in a situation where the projection is not the whole, right across the whole lot, but only for a few things that project out. It says just,
Right.
when he called you, when the planner spoke to you and said, did you not explain that, what you're telling us now? That you just told him, no, I'm not making any revisions?
No, we actually.
You didn't
we
ask him
had a
if he could
discussion
accept
with
those few jut outs?
Yes, we asked him, yeah.
Okay.
We asked him for that,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, committee members, does anyone else have any questions for the applicant? And if not, is someone ready to make a motion, bring a motion? Can we get the site plan? Mr. Taylor, sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Yeah, okay, no problem. Yeah, Mr. Chair, I find the requested variances satisfy the four tests under the Planning Act. I note that variance number 4 is going to be removed, so I'll reference that in my motion, which would be approval subject to the removal of variance 4. And I would like to add urban forestry condition number 1, which was requested in our additional material package. And I would like to tie the approval to the plans that have been submitted for the building.
So
just to make sure that the partial rear projections are our approval is limited to that, not the entire width of the building at the back.
Okay, so perhaps.
Not just be the site plan?
Yeah, perhaps we should
Because
tie it
of
to the
the
site plan as
withdrawal?
respect to length and depth, like to construct as illustrated on the site plan as it refers to the length and depth, and that will.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Allay the fears. Ms. Bartosik, is that's acceptable way to do it?
Yep, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion, Mr. Kumaric. All in favor? You have unanimous approval. Okay, thank you, Mr. Hosseini.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Item number 26 is 308 Renforth Drive. And this is an application to construct a second-story addition above the existing dwelling, a new covered front porch, and a second-story rear platform. There are hold on. There are
Three.
How many variances? 3 variances. We have support petition, and I believe that's all we have. Hold on. Oh yeah, we're in Renforth, okay. Yeah, that's all we have. We have a support petition. The applicant is Brank Mladenov.
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm the architect of the project.
Okay. Very straightforward application, sir. We have nothing on file from any city departments. All we have is your support petition. Would you like to advise the committee of anything before I see if they have any questions or if they're ready for a motion?
Very briefly, so item number 1, maximum height 7.2. We are asking 7.34 because we want a 9-foot ceiling to second floor. Maximum floor index 0.45. We are asking for 0.47, and this is result of the geometry of the building, also minor. And the last one, platform at second story to be 4 square meters. We are asking for 11.5. And just to point out that both neighbors on each side, they gave us support because this balcony, it will have like screening wall, exterior walls from floor to the ceiling. So privacy would be protected for the both neighbors.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the agent committee members, or is someone ready for a motion?
Happy to make a motion if no one has any questions.
Go ahead.
I find the application to be minor in nature. It meets the 4 tests. We have a support petition with 8 signatures. We have nothing from any city department, so I move for approval.
Thank you, Ms. Alderson, seconder for that. Mr. Palmer, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Next application is item number 27, 233 Grenview Boulevard South. We have an applicant's revision page on this one, highlighted to show revisions. It's to construct a 2-story front addition, a 2-story rear addition, and a new rear deck. The covered front porch has been removed. So we have the revision sheet. There are were 7 variances. There are now 6. The platform has been removed in variance 6, and variances 1 and 2 have been reduced. And we have 7 letters of support. And we have planning. We have a planning memo was requesting certain changes. One of the things they asked for was to reduce an FSI of 0.75. Mr. Romano has reduced it to 0.76, which seems pretty close. So we'll hear from Mr. Romano. He's the only speaker on this application. There are no speakers in opposition. Mr. Romano.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Franco Romano here on behalf of the owner.
Yep.
Item number 2 there, just to draw your attention that what should be the GFA or FSI of 0.76, that should read 230 square meters.
Oh, yeah.
I think the typo there is just a duplication of the 249.56.
Okay. So a 230 even, yep. 0.00.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that should be noted. I don't.
It's not the way I calculate it.
We don't need a full presentation on this, unless the members want a presentation from Mr. Romano. We always like Mr. Romano's presentations, but if it's not necessary, we have your presentation materials color-coded to show very clearly what you're looking for. So planning, so you made these changes, Mr. Romano, with the request of planning?
I'm sorry, your question was?
You made these revisions at the request of community planning, and you've reduced it. You're off by 0.1. I assume your position is that should be acceptable.
Sir, the application as revised is a reasonable application. I believe the original application was also reasonable. You see the broad community support was based on the original application. We worked hard to try to address what we thought was planning staff's points of concern, and I'm really not sure, and the owner is quite surprised to have received a report to say drop it from 76 to 75.
Okay.
You know, the owner was really intent on getting a covered front porch, which was the bulk of that lot coverage request, but they removed that as well as reduced the size of the dwelling. And, they're really reticent to have had removed that covered porch in light of receiving the report, but, happy to proceed with the application the way it's being revised.
Okay. Yeah, you have made certain, as you say, revisions to appease community planning that you're including a reduction point from 0.82 to 0.76. So committee members, any questions for Mr. Romano, or is someone ready for a motion?
I just wanted to double check, Mr. Romano. I don't know why at 0.76 I calculated it out to 231. Maybe I'm off on my calculation.
Yeah, we can put it in at 231. I know certain calculators round up or round down.
Anyway, otherwise, I'm prepared to believe the application meets the 4 tests, and I would like to propose approval as revised and with no condition.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Komoric. Seconder for that motion. Mr. Taylor, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Romano.
Thank you kindly, appreciate it.
Okay.
Just to clarify,
Next.
the number is 230 square meters. If you divide that by the lot area, it's 0.75 something, which rounds up to 0.76.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why it
Doesn't
look-
quite, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, our next application is item number 28, 52 Corbett Avenue. It's to construct a detached garage in the rear yard. We have comment from transportation. There are 5 variances. The transportation has 4 conditions, or actually 3, plus the last one is dissatisfaction of transportation services. So whether it's 3 or 4, and that's all we have. No comments from other city departments or neighbors. The speaker for this application is Eddie Perez.
Hello, good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. I'm Eddie Perez. I'm here on behalf of the owners.
Yep. Okay, pretty straightforward application. Would you like to advise the committee of anything before we see if they have any questions for you? You're okay with the transportation conditions, correct?
Yeah, we're fine with them. Thank you.
Okay, anything else you'd like to let committee members know before I turn it over and see if they have any questions?
No, it's straightforward. Garages are standard like that in the whole neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Perez, or is someone ready for a motion?
Yeah, just, Mr. Chair, if I may, a question for Mr. Perez. Are you okay with the Transportation Department condition that asks you to relocate the garage so that it's 1.63 meters from the rear property line?
Let me open the drawings 1 second. We're in line with that one. I would like not to, because I would like to be the 1.02. Sorry about that. Because we're in line with the neighbors, and the other neighbors is forward from ours. If you look at the footprint, if you can see the site plan, yeah, that one I prefer not to. I would like to line it up with the neighbors that like we have it now. Yeah, I didn't notice that one. Sorry about that.
Yeah, because I asked you if you're okay with those.
No, I know, but I didn't notice that one. I saw the other ones, but about the width and that, but yeah.
Okay, you got to thank the.
And even if we
panel.
do that, we're gonna have less green.
Okay,
We would
so
have
you-
less green. The variance would change on the green too.
Okay, so you were
Is
not.
that a,
Yeah, so you don't want condition 1.
Correct.
Good thing Mr. Komoric noticed that, or you would have.
I believe that was Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Taylor, okay. Good thing you mentioned that, because otherwise you would have had that in
Yeah.
there. So if committee members now.
Yeah, thank you.
You don't agree to that
I-
condition.
Could we all just take a minute and try and understand where transportation is coming from here.
Yeah, like, is this a new standard they're trying to impose or what?
Comfortable just cavalierly saying, let's not do that. Maybe there's something in the body above, and I'm trying to understand this. Is it essential or not, I guess is my point. I don't feel comfortable right now.
Because it says it's set back 1 meter, 0.02 from the rear property line abutting the existing public lane. Although property
Yeah.
permits are not a requirement of minor variances, the applicant is required to revise to be set back a minimum of 5 meters from the future rear property line, as per the city's DIPS requirement. I don't know what. It's just like future lane widenings, whatever. So it says, in other words, the garage must be set back a minimum of 1.63 meters, 1.13, which it was, plus another 0.5 meter from the rear to afford for future widening of the public lane. Yeah, we've seen this before. The question is, I think sometimes they say, well, that's never going to happen because you're never going to get all these properties to be relocated. Because I guess, Mr. Perez, all the garages are sort of in line at that 1.13 meter mark?
Yeah, well, if you put the, hello, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, if you put put up the site plan, you can see ours is in line with the neighbor to the right, and the neighbor to the left is even closer to the laneway. It's almost at the laneway. So we're, if you look at the house to your left, it's right at almost at the laneway property line. So we're even farther back. So I don't see why they would want 1.63. It's like you said,
Wow.
these are all concrete block garages. They're never going to remove all these garages.
Well, it's got to start somewhere, so. Anyway, unfortunately, you didn't miss that, so you didn't consider that or try to deal with them or get them to, you know. Well, you're built. Why is it? What's the hardship for you to comply with that, Mr. Perez, for your client to push it back that extra half a meter? It's a new garage,
the client,
right?
we could comply with it as long as we minus the green space, and we have to have less green space.
Well,
Because right now we
so
don't
some of
comply
your
with
other
green.
variances may change, you're saying, right?
Yeah, the green space in the back will change.
Well,
Do you not have space to make the garage not as deep?
Well, it's a standard garage. It's not that deep. It's only 22 feet. It's
I know, but there is room to make it smaller and still comply with the size parking spaces, isn't there?
well, to parking space 19.4, you can probably take a foot away from it. Because the walls are 8 inches on both sides, 1
I guess
foot.
it's half a meter anyway. You want to defer this? Again, it's going to put you way back in terms of when your clients want to build this thing, I imagine. So that's probably not what you want to do, but what do we do with this?
No, I think I would like to go with the way it is because we're in line with the neighbors and we're back from the other one. I don't see why transportation is asking for that anyway. If you look all along the laneway, all the garages are where ours is, or even forward more. So I don't see why they would impose this anyway.
Well, they're imposing it for the future, that it's got to, as properties get redeveloped, they'll make them push it back the extra half a meter for future lane widening.
I can see where it's coming, but I don't see that happening, to be honest. But we can, if you're okay with lowering the green space in the back.
Well, we can't.
We can
Then
move forward.
there's a notification issue. If we change any of the other variances, then you got a problem with notification. So by dealing with this, we affect your landscape issue. You have another issue. Correct, Madam Secretary Treasurer? We can't increase any of the other variances in order to comply with this. So committee members, I guess he said he wants to stay with what's before us. Sorry.
There's a walkway that they could potentially try to alter to achieve the extra green space that they would lose by moving the garage.
Okay, anyway, we have to make a decision. I don't know if Mr. Perez can comply with and giving up that half a meter at the rear of the garage in order to comply with transportation's request, and still comply with the soft landscaping. Is that possible, Mr. Perez? It's if
Not at this
committee
time, no, it
members
isn't.
are inclined to grant the application with the transportation condition, then, I don't know what, so let's see if someone wants to make a motion.
Well, I would move approval subject to the Transportation Commission condition, but Mr. Perez indicates he's not prepared to accept that. So I guess I'm kind of on the line right now between deferral and refusal. I'm not prepared to make a motion. I think we need to discuss this a little.
Well, unless the option is.
Can I just chime in? I would propose that Mr. Perez ask for a deferral or an adjournment so he can speak with transportation. Because the conditions, I mean, renaming Corbett Avenue is not a big thing, that's a typo. But the other three conditions all tie together with transportation, and then that impacts potentially on the soft landscaping area. So I think a deferral is probably appropriate. We'll try and get it back on as soon as we can, I would think. So I would make a motion for deferral to allow the applicant to consult with transportation and confirm any other variances required.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Seconder for that motion? Mr. Komarick? Thank you. All in favor? Okay, the matter's just adjourned. Mr. Perez, I suggest you try to get this resolved as soon as possible and then get it back on the next agenda that you can. Okay?
Yeah, I'll talk with them as soon as possible.
Okay. And,
I'll talk to them soon. Thank you.
You have to read those comment letters when they come in from city departments. Okay, our next application is yours also, so don't go away. Item 29 A, B, and C, 24 Fairfield Avenue. It's an application to sever the property, create two undersized lots, residential lots on each side, to be the site, develop the site of a new detached dwelling with an attached garage requiring variances to bylaws set out in parts B and C. Urban Forestry wants to denied due to the severance and variances 2 and 6. Urban Forestry is also requesting conditions 2, 3, and 5. There are 9 variances. We have the Long Branch guidelines, Arborist report. Planning is requesting conditions of approval. We have engineering construction services weighing in, and we have opposition from the Long Branch Neighborhood Association, and presentation from or letter from them, as well as a presentation. Registered to speak is Mr. Perez, as well as Christine Mercado from the LBNA. Mr. Perez?
Hello, good afternoon again. I'm Eddie Perez. I'm here on behalf of the owner. I read the notices from Forestry. We didn't have time to amend the drawings from when we got that, but we've done a lot of changes to the drawings from when we started. We've changed them on several occasions. We went back and forth with planning department, and we are now planning department supports our application. And as after I saw the notice from Forestry, I've been in touch with my arborist, and I've also been in touch with the owners, and we would like to remove 2 of the variances. We are going to remove variance number 5 and variance number 6 by moving the house forward. And by moving the house forward, we are not going to create any more variances. I also got in touch with the zoning examiner verbally as well. And by doing that, we're going to save the tree at the back. We're going to move it forward 1.2 meters.
Okay.
So by doing that, we're getting rid of 2 variances, and we're going to save the number 3 tree that they're concerned about.
Okay. So 5 and 6 being the depth and the length are being both eliminated. Okay.
They're going to be removed.
Okay.
Because the actual house right now is 16.99. It's not. That's just because of the way it's set on the site plan.
By doing that and moving it that much, you're not triggering any new variances.
Yeah, there was not going to create any new variances. No.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Perez at this point, or we'll hear from Christine Mercado and come back? He'll have a chance
I
to.
just have one quick question. When you move that house forward, how does that line up with the other two houses on either side?
It's going to be the average of the two. It's going to move
Okay.
forward. Yeah. It'll be the average of the two. So it'll be in compliance.
Okay.
I spoke to the zoning examiner.
Okay. And you're fine with the community planning recommendation to be constructed as illustrated on the architectural plans? Well,
Yeah, we're fine with that.
it will no longer be respect the building length of the basement, ground floor, and second. You no longer have a
Well,
length.
the building,
So should it just
the
say
building
that
will
the
remain
sign-
the same.
Excuse me?
But the site plan will change now. Do we have a revised site plan?
No, because we didn't have time to submit it because of when we saw the letter. But the house itself won't change whatsoever. It's going to be exactly the same size. It's right now 16.99. We're only here for the length and the depth because of the way the house is situated. We are not going to have those variances.
Okay.
It's moving it forward. It won't change the house, so you can tie it to the house. The floor plans and elevations.
So will that, as Mr. Komorak just mentioned, would that still be dated August 23rd, 2021? The architectural plans, we're going to have new architectural plans showing the house push back a foot or forward a foot.
Yeah, we're going to push the house forward.
Right. So I'm saying, so it's not going to be as shown on this architectural plan dated August 23rd, because at that point you hadn't pushed it forward. Madam Secretary,
Yeah, not the
Treasurer,
site
do we
plan.
have a point here? Mr. Komarik raised it. I think he's correct. Or what do we do with this condition of the?
Mr. Chair, I believe what the applicant is saying is that the site plan will change, but the architectural drawings will not. So we could tie it to the drawings.
Okay. So would you like to make that, make a motion?
No, I think I need to hear some presentations.
Okay. I thought he already did that.
I think we also have a speaker on this one.
Yes, I know. We had Christine Mercado, so I was asking if anyone had any questions or if we can go to Ms. Christine. Okay, we can hear from Christine Mercado now. Okay.
Hello, Mr. Chair.
Hello.
I'm just been hello. I'm just reviewing what Mr. Perez is actually proposing. So in the meantime, I would like to ask if staff would actually pull up my letter and go to page number 3. We do agree with forestry's objection and would request that this application be refused. Even with Mr. Perez's proposed revisions, moving it forward a foot, I'm just looking at the site plan. It's actually not going to correct the overdig that's going to be required next to this tree. And I do think that urban forestry should weigh on this and find out whether moving it forward a foot is actually going to make a difference, because they did object to the severance as well as the lot area in their report. So they've actually taken a more holistic approach. They've actually taken up a more holistic approach to this. And we do have a real concern with the removal of this butternut tree. The LVNA has received funding for the Long Branch tree inventory for the last 3 years. We've been working with the University of Toronto to create the Long Branch tree inventory. And to date, we've inventoried 70% of trees on private property in Long Branch. Our students were trained and supervised, U of T Master of Forestry, Professor D. Mahavelich, to conduct the tree inventory using Neighbour Woods program protocol in assessing size, health, location, and species. So in the last 3 years, we've looked at the data and have a pretty good idea of what we have in the Long Branch tree canopy, and we do have butternuts. So we weren't thrilled with the severance itself, and because it did remove all the native trees, but we also read the applicant's report and took his word that the trees were a combination of non-native trees and in poor condition. So we were astonished that Urban Forestry's report that was posted on October 12th disagreed and has identified the non-native English walnut tree as a butternut. And this shouldn't be taken lightly because the butternut tree is endangered and protected under the Ontario Endangered Species Act. Our students have inventoried butternuts in the neighborhood and found them on Lake Prom, in Marie Curtis Park, and just 100 meters away at 226th Street. So a butternut tree health assessor is a designation to assess the health of butternut trees under the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. And the city identifies butternuts all the time. So if staff was unsure this was a butternut, they would not have written a report saying that this is so. So the butternut tree aside, in looking on page number 3 of the application and looking at policy 4.1.5 and looking at this application through OPA 320, this application is creating lots that are not prevailing. They are not the most frequently occurring in the nearby context, which is the block, and it's creating a wedge in a string of large frontages on the block. On page 4, we ran the numbers and the lot area is deficient and is not prevailing. On page 5, we looked at the FSI. The FSI is not prevailing in the immediate context, according to the city data or MPAC. And on page 6, the dominant garage is not prevailing as well. While I recognize that he has been working with planning to minimize the impact of this application, I do believe that approval of this application in light of forestry's concerns, I do think that that would be premature. Just shuffling it forward without urban forestry weighing in, I don't think is a good idea. When we look at the application as a whole under chapter 4.1.5 and 3.2, the natural environment, there are policies that point to refusal of this application. And forestry has been quite clear that the consent and the associated variances would result in the removal of this rare and endangered tree. So if you approve this application, you're creating a new as of right building envelope, and unless appealed, you will tie forestry hands into issuing a permit to remove that butternut. So no one's saying that this property can't be redeveloped, but when proposals are considered, you need to see what's there before you start. The FSI is not prevailing on the street, it doesn't back onto similar FSIs or lot configurations, and it removes endangered trees. So in Long Branch, we have 15 decisions that are refusals for severance based on the assessment of the whole application, including preserving the natural environment and trees. So now that urban forestry has chimed in with their objections and qualified that it is due to the severance, the new lot configuration and the building length, we would respectfully ask this committee refuse this application. The last minute refusal, I don't think it would be responsible to approve this application without urban forestry looking at these applications again. I would support deferral and just step back and go back and have urban forestry comment on this. But to approve it today without them chiming in, I don't think is the wisest decision.
Okay, thank you. You want to wrap up? Or did you just wrap up?
I wrapped.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mercado. Any questions for Ms. Mercado at this point? Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, Ms. Mercado, you mentioned urban forestry's objection to this numerous times. Are you aware that they've also conceded to let it go forward with their conditions 2 and 3 for private and private tree and cash in lieu of tree?
Yes, I am aware of that, but that's because they have no choice, Mr. Taylor. Because what ends up...
You did solely refer to the refusal and did not acknowledge their alternate conditions of approval.
The alternate conditions of approval are for them to apply for a permit. So they have not acknowledged the revisions that Mr. Perez has actually asked. So if you think that I'm being too hard on their refusal, their conditions really lend to removing the tree. So that's why, and we don't want the tree to be removed. In North Long Branch, routinely severances are taking down mature trees that are native, and now we're talking about taking down an endangered tree. So if you look at the tree canopy north of Lakeshore, it is different than south of Lakeshore. And I do believe that we need to make a more holistic approach in tree preservation in North Long Branch.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so let's go back to Mr. Perez. Mr. Perez, what about, we normally don't like to defer matters once we've had a hearing. And your last application, item number 28, just got deferred after a long series of submissions by various people. So are we at that position again?
Yeah, can I just say a couple of things first?
Go
The
ahead.
young lady that said that we were pushing the house forward 1 foot, but I didn't say 1 foot, we're pushing 1.2 meters. And by doing so, we're going to be far enough away from the tree. We're not going to have to remove that tree. I already spoke to the arborist about that. We didn't have time to do the revised drawing because of when the letters came in because of that, but we're removing 2 variances, as I stated earlier. So the house is not longer than what we're required, and we're not asking for depth or length, and it's not 1 foot we're moving it forward, it's 1.2 meters, which is 4 feet forward. And by doing so, it's going to preserve the tree. So I thought I said that before we go forward.
Question for Mr. Palmer here. Mr. Perez, can I refer you to the comments from Engineering and Construction Services, which are dated January 9th, 2021? And I'm just kind of looking at them in the context of your revised site plan that's just you're trying to explain to us. So what you're proposing is that the buildings will be moved forward to the front lot line by 1.2 meters. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So in the sort of buried in the comments of the transportation services, there's a dimension in there for the parking space within the garage, which I'm assuming you're going to meet if all you're doing is shifting the building forward. But then there's another comment in here, and it's in paragraph. If you look at page 3 on comments, transportation services is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's in the 7th paragraph, so the last paragraph on the page. It says a minimum driveway length of 5.88 meters. So I think your site plan shows 6.12 meters. So if you're moving it forward 1.2 meters, that's about 4.9 meters for the driveway, which means it wouldn't comply with the transportation comments. Now, I'm not a zoning examiner, and I don't know whether providing 1 parking space is sufficient or whether you need a parking space in the garage and 1 in front of the house. I don't know. But I do know that transportation commented on your original site plan, and you're now revising a site plan today before us, and we don't know the fallout from all of that. I'm just putting it out there. And when we have all these unknowns, we could lead to one direction, I guess. So I want to get your comments on that, on whether you think you comply with transportation services, all their requirements.
Well, we wouldn't comply with the 5.88, but in that area, you only need 1 car parking. So we would be less than 5.188. But you only require 1 parking space in that area in Etobicoke.
But isn't there a requirement for a driveway leading to a parking space? I think that's what Mr.
I spoke to Hensley this morning, but we can defer the matter. If then we'll get it more accurate. I'm okay with that too. Then we can defer it, just so we can get this more correct, and then we'll come forward with a new arborist report and a new site plan, and I'll send it to transportation and get their comments on it.
Okay. Wow, 2 in a row. Okay, does someone want to make a motion to defer? See, that's when you get into problems of moving stuff and changing on the fly. You may trigger, like Mr. Palmer just pointed out, maybe your driveway is going to be deficient now. Like, we don't know what's going on. So, okay, thank you, Ms. Alderson. Seconded
Happy to
by
make that motion for deferral to give the applicant an opportunity to meet with various city departments.
Okay. Seconder for that? Mr. Komorek, thank you. All in favor? Okay. Opposed? Okay, I'm a smash motor. It passes 3-2. Motion matter is deferred. Okay, so we'll go on to the next one. Item 30, A, B, and C, 79A. Thank you. 79A Foch or Foch, I don't know how you pronounce it. It's an application, again, to sever the property into 2 undersized residential lots and on each side to build a new semi-detached dwelling with an attached garage, resulting in 9 variants on each of the 2 semi-detached dwellings so proposed. We have a cover letter, supporting materials. Planning is recommending refusal of the application, notwithstanding changes made by the revisions made by the applicant. We have engineering and construction services with their standard, and 50 Albright is opposed. The applicant is Stephen Key of Design Plan Services, and we have the neighbor who wrote in at 50 Albright registered to speak. Okay, Mr. Key?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Stephen Chi. I'm a planner from Design Plan Services. So we have been retained by the property owners of 79A Foch Avenue to present information on this application. So I guess I'll go straight into my presentation. I would like to know that prior to this application being scheduled on this agenda, we have had extensive discussion with planning staff, and changes were made to the original proposal to reduce the lot coverage, gross floor area, overall height, and segment wall height. I will go through the variances briefly, as detailed justification for all proposed variances are provided in my resubmission cover letter dated August 24th, 2021. Variance number 1 pertains to the proposed lot areas, which is 259 square meter for each lot proposed, where 332.5 square meter is required. As shown on my lot area analysis included as Schedule B of my cover letter, there are 115 lots located along Foch Avenue, and 52 of them are below the bylaw requirement, and many of them are single detached dwelling actually, so which would require an even higher lot area. 10 of the properties along Foch Avenue have a lot area lower than the bylaw requirement, and they are located on the same block as the subject property. There are 4 existing lots on Foch Avenue that are currently smaller than the proposed, including 78 Foch Avenue, which is located right across the street from the subject property. And also, based on our research of recent approvals, which is included in Schedule D of my cover letter, there have been 24 consent applications with reduced lot areas approved within the 500 meter radius of the subject property within the past 10 years. There are other similar and lower lot areas have been approved in this area. Variance number 2 pertains to proposed lot frontages, which is 6.8 meter proposed, where 9 meters required. Again, as shown on my lot frontage analysis, included as Schedule A of my cover letter, 53 lots out of 115 lots on Foch Avenue do not comply with minimum lot frontage requirement, and many of them are single detached, which will require higher lot frontage as well. And approximately 40 to 50 properties have a lot frontage of 7.62 meter or lower. 11 of the properties within non-compliant lot frontages are located on the same block as subject property. And also based on our research of recent approvals, there are similar or even lower frontages approved in the past 10 years. And lowest, smallest frontage approved in the area is the 6.64 meter located at 57 Albright Avenue. So it is our opinion that the proposed lot frontage and lot area respect the existing lot fabric in the immediate context and meets the criteria under the Planning Act. Variance number 3 pertains to the maximum lot coverage. 36% or 94 square meter is proposed, and 33% or 85.47 square meter is permitted. The increase is only for 8.5 square meter, which is minor in nature, and also other similar or higher lot coverage have been approved previously in the area, ranging from 33.28% to 42.8%. Variance number 4 pertains to the maximum gross floor area. 0.76 times the area of the lot, or 196.1 square meter, is proposed, where 0.4 times the area of the lot, or 103.6 square meter, is permitted. I would like to know that this variance is subject to the former Etobicoke zoning bylaw 67-1979 and bylaw 272-1981, which were approved in 1979 and 1981. With this standard, the permitted gross floor area is only 103.6 square meter, or approximately 1,100 square feet, which is an undesirable dwelling site for redevelopment in the city of Toronto and does not meet the needs of a modern-day family. We also want to point out that the zoning bylaw permits a 33% of the lot coverage, which represents a building footprint of 85.47 square meter. For a two-story dwelling, which is permitted within the subject zone, the gross floor area would be 170.94 square meter already, which already exceeds the permitted maximum gross floor area. And also, based on our research, there are other higher or similar approval of a similar GFA in the area. Variance number 5 pertains to the minimum side yard setback. 0.9 meters proposed for the south side yard of Part 1 and for the north side yard of Part 2. The actual setback measurement are slightly larger, shown on the plans, on the site plans, for 0.2 meter and 0.91 meter, respectively, and generally matches the footprint of the existing building. 0.9 meter side yard setback is a permitted setback through other zones within bylaw 569.
Yes, sir. Can you try to wrap up, please? You're over 5 minutes. Thank you. Just summarize. Do your summary. Wrap up.
Okay, sounds good. So the other variances are minor in nature, in my opinion. Based on the information and analysis we provided, it is our opinion that the proposed development meets the criteria, and the variance meet the 4 tests, and the resulting lots and dwellings are consistent and compatible with the existing neighborhood and will contribute to meeting the increasing housing demand in the city of Toronto, as in line with the city's policy direction to expand housing options in neighborhoods. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Chi at this point? And if not, we'll hear from the neighbor, Jandre Jake at 50 Albright.
Hi. Everybody hear me?
Yep.
I'm just really, I was looking at some of the planning department's refusal for it, and kind of stand by them. We get a lot of developers coming in here buying undersized lots, wanting to go maximize homes so they can make maximum profits, which kind of interferes with the character of our community. I know a few have slipped by, and when I have a say in something, I try to say it, and that's kind of to sum it all up. To build another 3-story or 3-story type home again and splitting lots, I'm not for it. It's a small lot, and they want to do a big house. It's all about profit, and once they're done, they leave. We have to deal with excessive parking. Extra square footage means extra people in the house, which means extra vehicles will come in. No matter what the data says, everybody's got a car pretty much in the family. I have 3, and we only have 2 drivers. So I just think it should be refused or deferred, whatever it is, but not allowed to go as high, and even the square footage. I stand by the planning department.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any questions for the? I guess, sir, you're behind the property. Is that what you 50 Albright in relation to 79 Foch?
No. I'm kind of diagonally across from it, where he was saying the other ones that were the similar size or similar build across the street. I could see their backyard from my front yard. And also that property there, their lot was also a bigger lot, and this one's not the same size of lot.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Chi, would you respond to those concerns? He sort of echoes the planning department. You think it's too much house on 2 small lots that you're seeking to create by a severance.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the comments from the neighbor at 50 Albright Avenue. So we are seeing other redevelopments in the area, and then they are generally small in size. And so one of the intention is to provide additional housing for the increasing housing demand. And I think the neighbor mentioned that the property that got severed across the street at 78 Foch Avenue has a slightly larger lot area. I think that's incorrect. We are actually larger, just by very little. And also with regard to parking concerns, there are no parking variances in front of you, Sir Chair. So we are providing adequate parking for the proposal. That concludes my speech. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for either the neighbor or the applicant, or is someone ready for a motion? Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I tend to agree with the planning department's analysis of this situation. I think as you aptly summarized it, too much house on too small lots. I think that sort of reflects itself in the fact that it needs 9 variances to fit these houses in. It's too tall, they're too wide, and they're not compatible in the immediate context. I just did a little Google Instant Street View tour of the street, and yeah, most of the lots in the on either side of this street from Albright Street south are 10, 12, 13, 15 meters.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think this is a compatible development for this this neighborhood, and I move refusal of the consent and the minor variance applications.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion. Ms. Alderson. Thank you. All in favor? The application is unanimously refused. Thank you, Mr. Kitty, and thank you, Mr. Klajak.
Thank you.
Hard to spell. Thank you. Okay. Next application, I'm going to request staff to give us some insight on this. Item number 31, 9 Chauncey. It's an application to obtain consent to sever the property, but it looks like, I don't know why this is before us, into 2 undersized residential lots. A previous Committee of Adjustment application, B0065-17EYK, approved this consent. So, Madam Secretary Treasurer, the applicant, by the way, is Edna Chu, but why is this before us if it was already approved?
So it's my understanding it was approved and they actually did fulfill conditions and the certificate was issued, but they didn't register the parcel within the required 2 years under the Planning Act.
Oh, okay.
And if that doesn't happen, then it's as if the consent never happened. So they had to reapply for the consent only.
Okay, so the consent lapsed because there's a requirement within 2 years to register or whatever. So I guess they missed that. So it's just, I guess they had to make another application, pay another fee.
Yeah,
correct.
Planning staff has reviewed the application, has no concerns with being scheduled. At least that's what they, okay. So basically it's just approve what was approved before. Committee members, any questions? Okay, so we guess we should get Edna Chu on the line. Edna?
No, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. So would you like to add anything? I asked staff,
no,
but I guess I should ask you. That's what happened?
Sorry, I'm sorry, the madam that was speaking previously, she summarized it correctly. It was just an oversight on our part. The 2-year period lapsed in November 2020. The lawyer who I was using retired during COVID, and it just slipped out of my calendar, and we proceeded, and it only came to our attention when we had an agreement for purchase and sale this summer. And so when we spoke to Committee of Adjustment staff, they said we would have to reapply because the Planning Act doesn't, it has no remedy for letting it lapse in this regard. So we've had to reapply. The application Everything is, the drawings and the survey are the same that were submitted by the previous owner back in 2017. And as you see there, all the consents were all, everything was approved, and we didn't have to reapply for the variances either.
Okay. Thank you. So staff, committee members, does someone want to weigh in with a motion to approve this application, I guess, that lapsed? Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is the technical matter. I don't think there are any merits to be considered here. I would move approval subject to the conditions requested by Engineering and Construction Services and Transportation Department.
Okay,
which are pretty minor.
Seconder for that. Mr. Komorek, thank you. All in favor? Okay, Ms. Chu, you have your approval.
Thank you very much,
You have
members
another
of the
2
committee,
years.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, we're going to get that one done immediately. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And that'll also be the standard consent condition.
I'm sorry, pardon me?
This will also have the standard consent conditions that you'll have to fulfill.
Okay, and I'll be getting copies of that.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item, item number 32, 1036 Royal York Road. This is construct a second-story south side addition, a second-story south side platform, and a front covered porch. There are 3 variances. Planning is looking for a condition of approval, revised second floor plan as it relates to the second floor balcony. We have support from 1038 next door. We have all the materials from the previous hearing. This matter was deferred from the September 12th, 2021 hearing. And that's all we have. We have a previous decision from September 2006. And the speaker on this application is Mark Smith, the agent. Hello,
Good
Mr.
afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I mean, it's a minor application. Would the committee like me to provide a presentation? We worked with planning. We were able to address both of their main concerns. And we had letters of support. There was 2 other additional letters of support from 1028 Royal York and also 1042. So there's 3 in total.
Okay. And you're okay with the planning condition that it be tied to the constructed illustrated in our second floor plan, the revised one in September?
Yes.
That's all fine. Okay.
In talking with the planner, that is what we came to an agreement on.
Okay. Do panel members have any questions for the applicants?
Was there any outreach made to number 1034?
From my understanding, the owner canvassed as many neighbors as they could.
That's an immediate neighbor that I just don't see any comment from. So
I can only say that they received the notice. It was also deferred, so they received 2 notices.
Fair enough.
Okay, we do have 3 support letters. But we were not from the one of the 2 immediate adjacent neighbors. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, if not, is someone ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion. I find the application to be minor and meeting the 4 tests. Would therefore like to move approval subject to it being tied to the second floor plan of August. Now, question of the date, there's an August 11th or August 13th? I believe plan, I'll let staff sort that out. But as that relates to the second floor balcony.
Thank you, Mr. Komorek. Seconded for that? Mr. Taylor, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you. I know we only have 2 applications left, 33 and 34. But how would we take a 5-minute break? And, or even less, okay? We'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, welcome back. Item number 33, A, B, and C, 121 Treeview Drive. It's an application to, again, sever the property into two undersized residential lots. And on the site of, on the site of each of the new lots so created to create a develop as the site of a new semi-detached dwelling with attached garage requiring variances to the zoning bylaws set out in parts B and C, and requiring variances to the zoning bylaw. I think in each case there are 7 variances, and we have a planning report for information dated July 21st, 2021. This matter was deferred from July 12th, 2021 for 3 months at Engineering Construction Services request. It was opposed by the agent, and resulted in a 3-month delay. We have a shadow study. We have the comments from Engineering Construction Services, Heritage Preservation, 3 letters of support, 2 letters of opposition. Planning has advised that their report still stands now from July 21st. And the applicant is, agent is Franco Romano, as well as we have the neighbor at 119 right next door registered to speak. Mr. Romano.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay, I guess.
So thank you, staff, for bringing up my slide.
Okay, supporting materials. There we go. Okay.
If it's okay with you, sir, I'm just going to go through a brief presentation.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So this slide 1 shows the revisions. The actual original submission was for 2 detached dwellings, and the 2 detached dwellings actually had a taller building height, larger lot coverage, gross floor area or floor space index a little larger, and a smaller side yard setback. With respect to the side yard setback, this is obviously the former Etobicoke Alderwood, where 0.9 meter side yard setback was a common required minimum. So 0.9 meters and sometimes even smaller is something that is quite common. The first resubmission had a semi-detached dwelling. The building height was so the building type changed from detached to semi-detached. I have a typo in the building height because one is 7.66 and the other is 7.78 meters, and that's basically to the top of the parapet. So then the 2 are different. They're not exactly the same. So we'll see the wall height is being reduced. The lot coverage for the first resubmission was at 45% because there's a different way to calculate certain things. And then the GFA was 6.66, side yard setback was at 0.9, again reflecting the historic side yard setback requirement in the area. The second resubmission, or the one that's in front of you today, Mr. Chairman and panel members, is still for semi-detached. The building height is the same as the first resubmission, 7.66 and 7.78 meters. Wall height is at 7.16. Lot coverage is at 36%. So smaller than the previous 2, not much different from what's permitted. And we'll see on the site plan that it's less than a 17 meter building length. It's at 16.99 meters. The GFA is at 0.65 and side yard setback is at 1 meter. So 1 meter is 10 centimeters larger than the typical 0.9 and 20 centimeters smaller than where a detached could occur on the site today. If we go to the second slide, we'll see that this is an air photograph, shows where the subject site is located. It's on the east side of Treeview. And we'll see that Treeview is interrupted by some open spaces, the former collegiate school. All of those white building envelopes that we see in between Lenore and Valermo, many of those are semi-detached dwellings. And so there are actually 2 units there, not 1 unit. And many of those are at 6 meter frontage, in between 6 and 9 meter frontage. Floor space index in excess of 1 times, quite common. If we go to the next slide, please. we'll see that on slide 3, here's a site plan. So this is oriented so the north is towards the top. The building footprint aligns with neighboring dwellings and it's staggered. So the front wall of both buildings are staggered, so is the height. So then it's not a uniform building presence, even though the two-dimensional architectural drawing shows it as a flat plane. That's not what you would actually see if it were approved and constructed. See in the lower right, lots that are smaller than 9 meters in frontage occur quite frequently, 22% of the time, and lots that are smaller than the subject site occur 86% of the time. So 33% of the lots within this block are semi-detached dwellings, and they do vary in size. So the proposal fits within the immediate context as well as within the broader context. And we see some of those pictures with the older form of semi-detached. Some of them don't have garages, so you have a little wider side yard setback, as well as some more recent construction. Floor space index within the neighborhood, we'll see that there's a wide range, 0.1 to 1.14. And I'm not including those in these statistics here. I'm not including the collegiate school redevelopment because that tends to skew the numbers upwards a little bit. We'll see just on Treeview Drive itself, FSI ranges up to 0.73, with 24% exceeding the permitted 0.4. And within the last decade, we'll see that 71% of new dwellings have a FSI variance and 10% exceed 0.6. So the proposal fits within the emerging character, certainly, and in terms of lot size, respects and reinforces the lot size. It's a low profile 2-story semi-detached integral garage, 1 level living above with an articulated facade, has no unacceptable adverse impacts. So subject to any questions, sir, I submit that the severance satisfies all consent criteria, and this is truly a minor variance application for each proposed lot.
Thank you. Exactly 5 minutes.
Thanks.
Okay, let's hear from Mr. Jerkin at 119 right next door.
For taking the call. Yes, so my parents have lived there for 50 plus years. Their biggest concern is, as much as they don't want to see 2 homes built there and feel that's too small an area to do so, even though you got semis on our on our same street, and the lot size is much bigger. Regardless of that, our biggest concern is my father has a garden right behind the garage, stretching all the way to the back of the yard. I did provide a couple of photos previously. I'm not sure if you still have that available to you, but it stretches. If you look at slide 3, it stretches. His garden stretches from behind the garage all the way to near the back of the property. Again, we're on the south side of the proposed site, save for maybe 2 meters between the end of his garden and the back of our property. The concern is they're proposing only 1 meter between the property line and what amounts to a 7.6 meter wall, effectively. So concern is, because my dad's garden stretches that whole part along the property line, and the lack of space between the wall and property line, it's going to affect his garden, especially with flooding and ice melting. Flooding and how the water flows. So that's our biggest concern. Or also, to a degree, concern is, if you have such a small area there, 1 meter to the property line, how are they going to build a 17.5 meter wall without going on our property to needing that space to build that sort of wall? But anyways, our biggest concern is how it's going to affect my dad's garden. And I think that's most notable with the variance, number 4, where the total floor area, the maximum allowed is 117. They want 191, which is 63% over the maximum floor area. If you go back to slide 3, you can see the house is much bigger in the back of the yard. The front seems to line up with the rest of the house in the frontage. But in the back is where you lose all that grass and green space. So less green space, less soil, the water won't seep through properly. And I presume all this water is going to flow along the property line to us, which again will affect his garden. I have reached out to the said property owner, I think is the husband of who's listed as property owner now. I mentioned that as a concern. He said they're going to put rocks in that 1 meter space. As far as I know, rocks don't allow water to flow properly into the soil. So I also have a concern regarding the sound and noise during this development. That is a concern. I'm not sure if that's to be addressed in this meeting or with the property owner directly. Yeah, also on the side note, we would like to see this develop sooner than later, but we wish they would take this in consideration. How it affects my parents' garden, and I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jerkin. We also have a letter from the other side. I don't know if it's right next or 125, which is, I guess, if there's a 123, it's one house over, which the committee members have in front of them. Any questions for Mr. Jerkin at this point? If not, we'll go back then to Mr. Romano for his rebuttal. Mr. Romano.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Mr. Durgan's property is to the south of the subject site, so there's no sun impact from the proposal on his parents' garden. The 20 centimeter side yard setback difference between what a detached dwelling, which is the current condition, and the proposal at 1 meter is truly a minor variance, and that area will be in a soft condition, whether it's stones or sod. It will be in an area where water will percolate and will not be able to run off onto a neighboring property. Grading and drainage plan is required as part of building permit, whether it's 1 lot or 2 lots, and all the grading and drainage needs to occur on the subject site, and there can be no overflow onto a neighboring property. And in terms of, as I mentioned, the building length and the rear yard setback are all well within what the zoning bylaw would allow, including the permitted building depth. In terms of construction noise, certainly I can speak to the owner and I can provide an undertaking that Mr. Durgan's parents will be notified when there's going to be any demolition of the property or construction, and construction will occur in accordance with the city's noise bylaws, and construction will occur again in accordance with the building permit. Subject to any questions, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Romano. Any questions for Mr. Romano, panel members, or for the neighbor, or is someone ready to bring a motion? Ms. Alderson?
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Romano. Do the ECS and transportation comments still stand in view of the different proposal from a detached to a semi?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. The reason why this was deferred is because the application, when it was revised back in May, it was not circulated to ECS. So ECS has received the semi-detached dwelling, this site plan, and so their comments of August, I think it is, 2021, that's before you.
Apply to the detached home. Or sorry, the semi.
They refer to this semi-detached design.
Thanks for clarifying.
In terms of HPS, my preference is to not have that condition, because every single one that I have seen in here, there has been no archaeological significance, but we understand that it's a standard condition, will satisfy that condition.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Palmer?
Yeah, Mr. Romano, I refer you to the planning memo in the last paragraph, and it sort of sums up the floor space index and what you're asking for. And it says the covered porch enters into the equation. So can you explain that to us? Because I couldn't find that in the plans. And I'd just like to find out how the covered porch enters into the equation of the floor space index.
It doesn't. It comes into play in the lot coverage. I think that's a typo. The covered porch is not enclosed, so it doesn't form part of FSI.
Okay, so the FSI is strictly on the, I guess, the footprint and the usable area of the dwelling.
Whatever has the 4 walls, even with the projections, the enclosed, it's the enclosed space inside the building.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any more questions, or is someone ready for a motion? Mr. Taylor.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I find this, this proposal to be quite in keeping with the immediate and broader context in which it exists. I find the lot size to be appropriate. I find the building configuration to be reasonable. And the variances meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, in my opinion. I would move for approval subject to urban forestry condition 3, the engineering and construction and services and transportation conditions, and the heritage planning conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. You have a seconder for that? Ms. Alderson, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Romano. And thank you, Mr. Jerkin.
Thank you, kindly appreciate it. Thanks for your efforts all day today.
Thank you. Okay, our last application of the afternoon is item number 3438 Government Road. It's an application to construct an east side second story addition. There are 2 variances. The existing window projection, 6.01 meters from the lot line, and the altered dwelling would be located 0.42 from the east side lot line. I assume that's in line with the existing, it's the ground floor east side, but we'll hear from the applicant if that is the same or if it's any further. The agent is Anthony Gornick, and as well we have the neighbor at 36 Government Road, Barbara Kremecki, registered to speak. Okay, so Mr. Gornick. We have 2 letters
Anthony
of support,
Gornick here
1
as
letter
agent.
of opposition, a cover letter, and that's all we got. The opposition letters from the speaker. Mr. Gornick?
Hello. So the application is to construct an addition over top of the existing garage, and this to the right-hand side. So we have 2 variances related to this design. Side yard setback. So we propose to maintain the existing setback from the garage, so on the lower portion, but we do have a 6-inch projection or a slight cantilever if you were to view the front elevation to the right-hand side, primarily to create a little bit more room space to the bedroom above and to create a slight kind of banded detail running around the perimeter of the garage. The other variance is for front yard setback. That is somewhat a technicality. The current home has a bay window there, and we just are redesigning that portion to be a bit of a box style, but the existing foundation that's there is going to be maintained, so that setback.
Right.
The existing setback is the exact same as what our application is listed.
Right, so when I said it's likely, variance number 2 is slightly higher than the ground floor, you're gonna have, you said, a bit of a 6-inch cantilever over for the bedroom above. And then the existing front yard lot line window projection is more or less outside the, you're building on the east side, this is the front, and you said you're just changing a bay window into a box window, so.
Correct, but the foundation for that bay to box is being maintained.
Right, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Gornick at this point, or we'll hear from the neighbor and, okay. Okay, let's hear from the neighbor at 36, Barbara Kremecki.
Hello, I'm Barbara Kremecki.
And I just want to check, is the letter we have from you, let's just see, is it from you? We have a letter here, 3-page letter. Is there a signature on this letter?
Yes.
And that's, yeah, we have 2 letters. One from 21 Thorndale. And then we have another letter. Is this from you? I don't think it's, oh yeah, submitted by Mrs. Barbara Kremecki. Okay, we have your letter right in front of us. Perhaps we can, it's up on the screen too. Okay, why don't you just briefly summarize what your concerns are?
Go ahead and talk. as my written letter indicates, I have a strong objection to this request for variances.
Which of the two variances are you finding objectionable? Both of them?
Well,
Or one of them, or?
I, I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer, but what I understood is both of them are somehow interrelated. That's why I just put that I object to both, because I live on the east side. There's a very narrow, well, it's a squeeze through on 38 Government. I have a little bit more land. There's pre-existing problems with water here. The roof was just fixed with new eavesdrops. All the water's pouring on my property, causing damages of moisture and mold. And this cantilever would probably be even worse. And none of this has been ever addressed yet with this new owner, because they're not even living here yet. So, and I don't like cantilevers. I did see about 2 or 3 in the whole neighborhood, and they don't look nice either. They just wouldn't fit into as a next door house.
Yeah,
you know.
ma'am, I think what he said,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
This is my son.
No,
is
no,
that-
we have
and
one
my
one
mom's
speaker.
very nervous
Sorry,
because
son. Please, we're listening to your mother, not okay. So all I'm saying to you is all we're allowed to consider. We heard it's a 6-inch cantilever, and it's an existing condition on the side. Other than that second floor, they're not changing the ground floor. It's just over the garage, and it's just going to protrude slightly. So you have to tell us just
And
what
it's
that protrusion, not the whole construction, but just how that impacts you, just the variance. And we do
Well,
have
the
your letter.
whole east side, hello?
Yes.
The whole east side light will be gone from this construction.
Yes.
I will have no light coming in. And it's just gonna look terrible. I just a year ago, they built this huge house on the other side, and I have like no privacy whatsoever.
Yep.
And I have to keep my blinds closed all the time. And in that particular house, these are things that don't even come up at this initial stage. But once they finish building, for instance, on the other side at 34 Government, the water from their eaves comes straight onto my driveway, for instance. So whenever it's something going to be closer, I'm expecting problems and damages, and that's why I'm objecting. I've been living here for 50 years, and I've been happy to live here. Now I'm becoming very miserable in my home here because doing things totally unexpected like that.
Okay, ma'am, you'd like to add anything else, or you're finished with your submission? We'll see if committee members have any questions for you, and the applicant will respond. Committee members, any questions for Mrs. Kremecki? Okay, so we'll go back to Mr. Gornick to respond.
And there was one more thing I wanted to mention. Besides just the water from the eaves, the previous owner put a lot of not only the cement at the back near my home, a lot of stones that pushed the fence. And I think if anything, if they do go ahead with this building, they should put a retaining wall there so I don't have water damages. This street is sloping down eastward towards the Humber River. So all these new people that are constructing these homes, they're putting too much cement, hardscaping, and this is causing damage. My home is an older home, and I'd like to stay here longer. I feel like I'm being squeezed out, so I have a lot of objections, but some of the legal things I wrote down there that, we found on the internet, which I hope is relevant the way you assess it as well.
Okay, ma'am, thanks.
Thank you.
You've been speaking over 5 minutes, so we'll have to, you have to
Okay, thank you.
finish off. Okay, thank you. And just a concern that he's only coming, he's building, it's not a brand new house, it's an addition on your side, unfortunately, above the garage. But he's not coming any closer on the ground floor than he is currently. And the cantilever portion, I believe he said, was 6 inches. Perhaps he'll clarify. Mr. Gornick, can you respond to the neighbor's concerns? And then can you please reiterate how much of a cantilever you said it is?
Yes, so the cantilever along the right-hand side is 6 inches over the existing garage wall. I've read the submission from the neighbor very carefully, and there are no excavations taking place here for this project. So there will be no grade changes, no impact to rainwater and flow of rainwater. So we're not going to be doing any excavations where we're going to be changing the topography of the site. The current home has a overhang projection along that side of the property that exceeds the 6 inches that we're asking for. So, I mean, the distance between our current sidewall and the neighbor's current sidewall will be exactly the same, and there'll be actually no changes there. The neighbor actually has a 6-foot side yard setback currently, so that's a very generous side yard setback along her side. In reading her letter, she referenced windows and privacy issues. I mean, we have no windows along our side wall that'll impact her privacy. And also in reading her submission, there was a mention about, shadowing and affecting her sunlight. So I prepared a sun shadow study and submitted it. It's on file if you wish to see it, but there's absolutely no impact from the existing condition that's there presently today to what we propose in our sort of design. So we're, basically keeping the existing footprint of the home, adding to the right-hand side over the garage. And so if we were to scroll down to the next one, the neighbor, our neighbor would be on the right-hand side in the image. So if we were to go down to the next. Yeah, so that's sort of the existing condition. So up at the top, I see existing in the spring. The next image down should show the proposed image, so we can kind of study the differential and how the shadowing affects the neighboring home. Virtually nothing. Like it's the same. So I would say that it's a very minor application, 2 variances, one of them maintaining the existing front yard setback, and the side yard setback, the actual physical distance where we'd be walking is the same. Just the setback variance is needed just for room size and really for aesthetics when viewing the home from the street.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gornick. Panel members, any questions for Mr. Gornick or for the neighbor, or is someone ready for a motion? Mr. Taylor.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I see 2 very minor variances being requested here. Minimal, if any, impact on neighboring properties. And the 2 variances satisfy the 4 tests under the Planning Act, in my view. I move approval subject to urban forestry condition 2.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion. Ms. Alderson, thank you. All in favor? Unanimous approval. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gornick, and thank you to the neighbor as well. Okay, and it's now
2 minutes
after 4, and we are adjourned. Motion to adjourn. I realize we haven't been asking for motion to adjourn. It's unanimous. Okay, thank you everyone for another wonderful hearing at Committee of Adjustment. We'll see you next time. Be safe.
Thank you, staff.